My name is Kristin. I'm the president of Tri Delta.
Hi everyone, I'm Kristen. I'm the president of Alpha Chi Omega. We'd like to thank, is it coming out? Okay. We'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. You know, it's like a hectic week with midterms, but thanks for everyone who came out.
We're just going to go over what exactly tonight's presentation is. So I'm going to introduce Alex Idle, and she's going to talk to you a little bit.
Thank you guys. Tri Delta and service have always been a passion for Andrea Cooper. Andrea pledged Tri Delta at Florida State University and became an active alumna member upon graduation. She has been an officer in 4 different Tri Delta alumni chapters, including president of the Denver, Colorado alumni chapter. On the fraternity level, Andrea was the fraternity music chairman for 4 years, a collegiate district officer for 7 years, and a recruitment consultant. Her experience with acquaintance, rape, depression, and suicide comes through the tragic loss of her daughter and only child, Kristen, in Alpha Chi Omega in 1995. In 1998, Andrea started traveling to colleges and conferences, telling Kristins Story in collaboration with Delta 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 and Alpha Chi Omega National Foundations. Since 1998, Andrea has spoken at over 300 colleges and 22 conferences internationally, reaching to over 80,000 students. Andrea has been awarded the George W. Kimball Award from Sigma Alpha Epsilon for her contributions to the interfraternity community. She was also honored with the Theta Phi Alpha Siena Medal for turning tragedy into triumph, the highest honor awarded to a non-member of the Theta Phi Alpha fraternity. Andrea admits she learned much more about rape and depression through research and experiences collegians and alumni have shared with her after her presentations. Andrea resides in Littleton, Colorado and Horseshoe Bay, Texas with her husband Mike. Please give a warm welcome for Andrea Cooper.
This has been a whirlwind this afternoon. When I tell you what happened, you will understand. I'm very laid back and casual, as you will find out, so I hope you are too, and that you're really relaxed. I have been battling a really bad cough and cold and just praying every day that I can make it. 2 nights ago, I was at Lehigh University, which is one of your rivals, but it's terrible. Do they have a basketball team? They do, don't they? Or do they?
Not one. Yeah, not that one.
Because I never hear of them playing. I know you guys are really good. Now, how are you doing now? Are you getting close to the finals?
Yeah.
Good. I'll tell you the schools, and I don't want to make you, angry because I have some other favorite basketball schools. But I love Duke. I love UNC Chapel Hill, and I'm just basing it on my visits because I had fun. And Marquette, how's Marquette doing? So I love all of you guys, and I know you beat Syracuse the other night, right?
Yeah.
By what, 2 or 3 points? Congrats. I was really happy about that. You're definitely one of my favorites. So good luck. Now, how is your women's basketball team? Really good? Are they in the finals too? Wow, I'm going to have to pay attention to this. Well, my husband went to the University of Florida, and I don't know if you remember, but 2 years ago, they won the national championships in basketball and football. That's not fair, is it? And I went to Florida State, which is their rival, and we didn't do well in either area. We have had our good years in the past, but I love it because I was able to come in yesterday afternoon. I drove over from Lehigh, and rented a car and didn't get lost. I had a map and my GPS. And then one goal, you're going to laugh at this, that I've always had when I come to Villanova, and then pardon me for talking about this because this is something you're not interested in, is shopping. And of course, everybody knows about the King of Prussia Mall. Well, this is my third visit here, and I've never had time to go. So I went, okay, this afternoon I'm going to the mall, and I had lunch with some Tridelts and Alpacais, and it was so much fun, and tomato soup and grilled cheese, which is comfort food even for somebody my age. And they go, oh, it's so close, you won't have a problem. Well, okay, I had two problems. One, I didn't have a map, and I was going to Google map it, and I didn't do that, and I didn't have a regular map, so I thought, I will just trust my GPS. Well, it got me right there, directly, 15 minutes, so I timed it. I was on like this mad shopping trip, running to as many sections, well, no, I was only in one section, thinking, okay, now I've got to leave here, I want an hour to get dressed. So I came back, and I was not using any common sense at all. I didn't pay attention to how I got there, what direction I came from. I said, I'll just trust my GPS. Well, I'm not really used to my GPS, and I just punched go home. Well, I thought home would be the Villanova Conference Center. It was Denver. So I went, my husband Alexandra, I don't know whether to tell my husband this because he always thinks I'm so spacey. I got on I-76, man, this is kind of funny, isn't it? So I'm on I-76 West and no exits are looking familiar. And then I read my GPS and it says 164 miles to the next turn off. And I thought, where am I going? And 164 miles. So it gets better. So I paid toll going west, got lost when I got off, tried to turn around and come back, paid toll coming back. And Alexandra was supposed to pick me up at 5:15 and we left the conference center at 5:45. So, whew, but I am having fun. And I swear, if I hadn't been doing this for 10 years, I would be really stressed. But I'm like, oh well, it'll happen somehow. And I didn't have long enough at King of Prussia. So you're eligible for a grant in 3 years, and I would really like someone to invite me back. And I'm going to schedule 2 days to shop at King of Prussia, because it is an amazing, amazing place. But I love this campus, and I mean that sincerely. You probably think, oh yeah, that's like everybody that comes here that says I love Villanova. But the fact that I went to a large state university, I really just think the private colleges are so pretty and special. And I hope I don't lose my voice. Ralph, where did you do your undergrad?
UK.
Oh, UK, and so you're used to a small private too. Would you hand me my purse? I'm going to take a throat lozenge out of it. I got too excited talking to you guys. That's my problem, I get excited. If I was just a calm, quiet person, this wouldn't happen. It's like I meet people and they say, sometimes they ask me what I do, and if they're over 40, I say I work for Tri Delta, because I used to tell everybody I spoke on rape, depression, and suicide, but the old people can't handle that. It's like it's overwhelming. Do you know what I mean? And so then I found that now when I talk to people, sometimes I'll just say, well, I just talk on depression, and I'll say, it's hard to believe that somebody that's happy talks on depression. I said, but I'm medicated and I've had therapy. It's true. I really And I was at a bookstore in Lehigh, and the lady said, because my business card says Kristins Story, and she said, "Oh, are you a storyteller?" Well, now that's a profession I never really thought about. And they have this little storytelling group in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And I said, well, I speak on college campuses. And she said, what do you speak on? And I said, oh, depression. And that's when I said, don't I seem happy? And it's because I've been cured. And that was about all I said. And then she said, which I thought was really understanding of her, because she was probably in her 50s, that she knew that that was really a problem. And actually, she'd had an ex-husband that had been depressed. And that was one reason why they'd gotten divorced, because he wouldn't go for counseling. So I had some really interesting conversations coming up with what I do about Kristin's story. But I don't know if you realize the reason I'm here is because of Alexandra Idol. Oh, here she is. I thought I was looking at her. Alexandra's not there. She applied for a grant way back in October. And Alpha Chi and Tri Delta give 7 grants a semester. And we had 26 colleges apply for 7 grants. And if you heard some of the schools that didn't get one, you would really be shocked. Because you would say, oh, wow, they sound like such, great large universities, but it's all up to who writes it and who is a good grant writer. And we have a committee of 5, and you all were chosen, so you got me for free. Thanks to Ms. Alexandra. And actually, you have gotten a grant all 3 times, so that kind of puts you in a special category. But I want to share something from the application that Alexandra wrote that is very meaningful, which is why she thought it was important that I come to Villanova, and I hope you feel the same way. She said, Villanova University students are taught to value and respect the dignity of each person. Kristin's story connects with the objectives of the program and Villanova's mission as an institution. Villanova University focuses much of its efforts on the addictions and abuse of alcohol, but she felt there was a need to focus on other issues as well. These are also issues that are kept quiet at times, but the students and faculty do not know how to address these issues of rape and sexual assault. Kristin's story will give Villanova University the tools it needs to educate students and faculty about rape, depression, and suicide, and allow them to address issues beyond alcohol abuse. Wasn't that beautifully written? I just think she did a wonderful job. You could turn that into an English professor and maybe get an A on that. But she has worked very hard coordinating this, and like I said, you all, and I didn't know you were an Augustinian school. I keep learning. I thought that y'all were Jesuit. So now I've got to Google Augustinian and find out exactly how that differs from Jesuit. Now, is Duquesne Jesuit?
Spirited.
Oh, I got something else to research. It's what?
Spirited. They're an international order.
Are y'all familiar with that one, the Spiritan?
Well, Jesuits focus on education.
Right.
Augustinians focus on community. And the Spiritans focus on service. So they are
Wow. Well, do you think that's one reason why Villanova does so many service projects for the community and the world? Is because of Oh, that is so cool. I didn't know that. I am constantly learning. That is wonderful. Okay, we're having a problem with the lights, and we're trying to find, I want to see you, and I want you to see me, but I want you to see that too. So we've got to figure out, this is good, but can you see me at all? Yeah. Okay, now I'm not egotistical, so I don't have to be in the beauty spotlight. So as long as you know I'm here. Remember I'm here? Okay, so we'll do with this one, because Kristen is the most important part of this story. But she was born in Corvallis, Oregon. And when she was, she wasn't even a year yet, we moved to Houston, Texas. My husband and I were in graduate school out in Oregon. And then he got a job with Shell Oil in Houston. And so she lived there till she was about 5, and then we moved to Denver, Colorado, where our main home is now. And in the winter, we go to the hill country outside of Austin in Texas, because my husband doesn't like cold weather. That's kind of funny for you all up in the Northeast, isn't it? But it doesn't bother me. I have fun no matter what the temperature is, as long as the snow doesn't keep me from getting somewhere. And then when she was 10, we moved to Scotland. Now, how many of y'all, when you were 10, would like to have moved overseas? Okay, a few of you. And you know, that doesn't surprise me for Villanova, because a lot of you have traveled a lot and are from far, far away. But for example, at Lehigh, I think 2 people raised their hand. And I thought at 10 it would be okay to move because you don't have a boyfriend, you're not in a club. And, but she was so homesick that first year overseas. And she acted kind of excited about going, but she was hiding inside how unhappy she was. And I think one thing that made the move hard for her is she was an only child. And don't y'all think it's worse to move if you're an only? Because, you know, even if you hate your brother or sister, at least there's somebody, right, that you can hang out with. So, you know, Mike and I had to be her playmates until she made some friends. And then she cried the whole year that she was in Scotland. Well, had I had the wisdom then that I have now, I would have known she was suffering from childhood depression. But this was 1985. It was way before you were born, and they knew hardly anything about childhood depression. And then when she was 11, we got transferred to London. And I was really excited about that because I like being near a city and having a lot to do. And Kristen seemed kind of happy about it because she knew we get to go to a lot of musicals and, you know, there were more fun things to do. But she was still kind of unhappy and homesick. And when she was 12, we got transferred back to Denver, which was good and bad. Mike and I were not ready to come back yet. We were having a wonderful time in Britain. We hoped to stay for 10 years. We absolutely loved it. But Kristen was happy to be coming back home, which I know some of y'all can relate to. And she thought all her little girlfriends would be waiting for her. Do you think they were? No, because you women know that, especially at age 12, you move on and find a new group of friends. Now, I had a lot of men present at Lehigh, and I'm so thankful that we do have some men here. And you're in the back, so I can't pick on you and ask you questions. You planned that, I know. But at Lehigh, I said, okay, guys, if you moved away for 2 years and you came back, how would your friends be? And they go, just fine. Right, guys? I mean, you guys don't care. They go away, they come back, we're fine. But we women are so cliquey, right? And unfortunately, her friends were in the popular group, and they sat at the popular table in middle school. You know how that works. And so she was really unhappy then. But then, when she went to high school, she went to Arapahoe High School in Littleton. Do we have any Denver people here? Yay! Where are you from?
Fort Collins.
Okay, the man behind you.
I'm Littleton, Colorado.
Littleton?
Yeah, Hunter Regis.
Oh, wow. I have so many friends whose kids went to Regis. But you're too young. They graduated from college now. But that is a fabulous school. Okay, now in front of you we have somebody from Colorado.
Went to Pooter High School.
Where?
Pooter.
Oh, Pooter is out by... That's right. That's right. I've seen that on the news. I've not been here, but that's right. Any other Colorado people? I knew they do come far away, actually. We do get out of Colorado occasionally. And, but she was really happy at Arapahoe High School. She was happy for several reasons. She got in every group she wanted to be a part of. She was always very musical, and she made the select choir, one of the select choirs. She played flute in the band. She did the flag thing, the color guarded the band. She was in every musical they had. She never got the lead, but she was just so happy to be a part of it. And then she was in one play that they had. And then she was on swim team, and she was a lifeguard in the summer. So she really, really seemed to be happy to me. And another thing that made Kristen's life so happy was her best friends were guys. And as you know, sometimes I don't know about the men in college, but the boys in high school make the best friends. For how many of you women were guys in high school your best friends? Now, how many in college are they still your best friends? See, not quite as much. And there's a lot of dynamics going on there that we need to analyze, but we won't do that right now, fortunately for you. I think in college you get so involved, especially if you're in a sorority, maybe. And I know most of you here ski or board. How many of y'all ski or board? Okay, just about everybody. Have any of you skied in Colorado or boarded? Yay! All right, my personal favorite place is Vail. This was actually at Keystone. I broke my leg at Keystone. I also broke my leg skiing in Oregon, but I kept skiing until the doctor replaced my knee last year, and he said I really could if I wanted to, and I said, no, thank you. I think I've had enough. But Kristen, having learned at 3, like some of you did, who was I talking to today that we were talking about your skiing and your learning so young? It was you. And you learned when you were 3, right? And we were talking about putting those little skis on you, and it was steamboat, right? And you're the steamboat girl, where Aspen. And so if you learn young, you're an expert. And Mike and Kristen could do the black slopes, which are the hardest, the moguls, the powder. I personally was a blue slope skier. I would do black if it was groomed. And if I were stretching in that position, it would take 5 people to get me out of it. And there is myself and Mike and Kristen, and that is Beaver Creek, which is just west of Vail. I don't like that quite as well because they don't groom it, but I know you hot skiers and boarders would like that. And there's Mike and Kristen before senior awards night, and I know you had that in your high schools, and all of you are outstanding students or you wouldn't have gotten into Villanova. And they announce your scholarships and whatever awards that you received in high school. And there, Kristen got the Performing Arts Award for being outstanding in band, choir, and drama. And there's her graduation picture. Now, you chose a small private college, which in the beginning I said just has some absolutely wonderful aspects to it. How big is Villanova? 6,000? Now, see, that's not as small as a lot of schools. Duquesne's smaller than that, isn't it? About the same size? Well, you're not going to believe how small Kristin's school was. She chose a small private college in Kansas named Baker University. It has 980 students. I know y'all think 6,000 is small, right? That's smaller than your freshman class. And just like you, she wanted a smaller school where she wouldn't have those large lecture halls and wanted to, form a relationship with the professors. And Baker had 4 sororities and 4 fraternities. They have Tri Delta, Alpha Chi Omega, Zeta Chi Alpha, and Phi Mu. And the fraternities are SIGAP, Kappa Sigma, Delta Tau Delta, and then a local. And I won't go into the whole recruitment story because we have men here and they could care less. But let me just say this, that when Kristen called me to tell me she picked Alpha Chi instead of Tri Delt, I was not a mature Panhellenic woman. And I broke down and literally sobbed. Now, I should know better because I come from a Panhellenic family. My mother was a Zeta at Alabama, then I pledged Tri Delt at Florida State, then my sister pledged Delta Gamma at Florida State. So why would I think Kristen would follow one of us? But you know what? I got over it. And I feel very blessed because now I feel like I have 2 sororities. The Alpha Chi's treat me as one of their own. Like I said, they're part of the grant. And I have the Alpha Chi Mother's pin that I was presented by a past national president. So they're very, very close to me also. Well, when I left Kristen at Baker, it was 10 hours away from Denver, and a whole bunch of you are that far away from home or further. And it was really hard for me because she was an only child. We were very, very close. I felt that she had really become a good friend. But little did I know that a year and 10 months later, she would be dead. Now, as a parent, we always worry we're going to lose our child in an automobile accident, because that is the #1 killer of college students. And you probably lost some good friends or relatives in bad accidents. But I never dreamed I would lose a child to suicide. When I was growing up, now I realize that was really the old days, but you never heard about suicide. And I know it wasn't happening as much as it is now because I've seen statistics. I haven't seen statistics that go back to when I was in high school, but some that go back to the 80s, and it's definitely on the rise. How many of you know someone that has attempted or committed suicide? So that's about 98% of this room. And I get that percentage everywhere I go. And I just want to tell you all, I am so sorry if you've lost a loved one to suicide. And I'm going to a campus in California next week where a sorority woman committed suicide either last semester or last year. And you know how close the Greek community gets. So whenever somebody dies in the Greek community, it affects you all. And I was just at a college in Florida where a member of a fraternity committed suicide last semester. And I was blessed that they asked me to come over and just chat with them in their chapter house. And we just kind of had a heart-to-heart and a grieving session. And that's something I love to do if I'm on a campus and a chapter's had a loss, to try to help you with the grieving. So I do know what you're going through. You know, they say, don't say I know how you feel, but I do know how you feel, because it's the pits to lose someone you love by suicide. Well, it was New Year's Eve, 1995, so it was the middle of Kristen's sophomore year at Baker. And she was home for winter break, just like y'all go home. And she was going to be going out for New Year's Eve parties on New Year's Eve. And, you know, she was a sophomore, she was 20, and I didn't quiz her that much anymore. I didn't go, you know, which parties are you going to? I knew her friends that she hung out with. So I wasn't worried, and I said, you know, is somebody picking you up, or are you driving? And she said, well, I think I'm going to drive. I think I'll be a designated driver, because she told me she didn't drink. So I thought, oh, that's great, she'll be the designated driver. So Mike and I left about 7:30, and Kristen was there with a guy friend from high school, not her boyfriend back at school. She had a boyfriend, and he had to go to work at 8:30. And so Mike and I came home at 2 in the morning, and this couple let us off in front of our house, and Kristen's car was there. So I had two thoughts. My first thought was, I'm so glad she's home safe and sound. And my second thought was, I'm surprised she's home at 2, because don't you think 2 is early for New Year's Eve? I expected her to stay out all night, and that was fine with me. So Mike and I walked in the house, and I wasn't sure exactly, you know, where Kristen would be, or if she'd be in bed or anything, but every single light was on in our house. Well, that wasn't alarming, because when Kristen was home alone, she loved to turn all the lights on. So at that time, we lived on a house on a hill, and it was a 4-level house. And when you walked in, we had an entryway, living room, dining room, kitchen, breakfast room, and then you went down 4 stairs, and we had a long our family room. And so I got to the middle of the house where I could see into the family room, and there was Kristen lying on the floor, sound asleep. She was on her back, she had good color on her face. But one thing that I couldn't figure out was the music was blasting from the speakers. And I'll never forget what song it was playing till the day I die. It was Alanis Morissette's You Ought to Know. And I just heard that on the radio driving back from the mall today. And so I was about from here to the 3rd row, so not that far from Kristen. We didn't have a deep family room. And so I said to Kristen, "That music is awfully loud, isn't it?" Well, I didn't get any response from her, and I knew I was loud enough. So what would you have thought? What do you think my first thought was? That she was drunk, right, and she'd passed out. Well, for me, that was a huge thought because I was the stupid, naive mom that didn't think she drank. Don't I look like I'd be naive? And so to think that she had something to drink and pass on, oh my gosh, well, I knew that happened. So I started to walk over to her to get a better look because we parents like to check you out. And when I got halfway to her, it looked like she wasn't breathing. So then I got the absolute worst feeling I will never be able to describe. It was like a panic attack. It was like the floor was pulled out from under my feet because I thought she was dead. And I thought she was dead of alcohol poisoning because what else could you figure out at that moment? And Mike was up in the kitchen getting a glass of water. And I asked him later what he was thinking. He said, well, I was trying to figure it out too. So I walked all the way over to her to get a good look. And when I did, I leaned down to feel for the pulse on her neck. And she had no pulse. And I looked down and she had a gun in her hands. And I knew that she had shot herself and was dead. So I screamed to my husband, Mike, Kristen's dead. She shot herself. And he said, what? I mean, you can imagine your dad's. And I said, Kristen's dead. She shot herself. And he went, oh no. And he ran down the stairs and he knelt next to Kristen. He was just sobbing on one side of Kristen. And I'm standing on the other side, just shaking. And luckily for me, I didn't see any blood. And I don't understand anything about guns. But I asked the detective why there wasn't any blood where I was. And he said that evidently the bullet had gotten lodged in her skull and there was not an exit wound. But for the side that my poor husband was on, it had all the blood. And I've never asked Mike, what he saw. I mean, who would want to know that? I would have nightmares. And I don't know how Mike has been able to, not have nightmares from seeing that. So somehow I got the strength to go to the phone and dial 911. And I'm still crying. And I gave my name and my address. And I said, our daughter's dead. She shot herself. And the operator said, are you sure she's dead? I'm so sorry about all the coughing, but I know you understand. And I said, yes, I checked her pulse and her breathing. She has none, and she has a gun in her hands. And the operator said, where's the body? And I said, down in the family room. And she said, is there anyone near the body? And I said, yes, my husband, Mike. And she said, tell him he has to leave the room immediately, because if they're good police, they treat every suicide like a possible homicide. So I called to Mike and I said, Mike, you have to come up here. And we're both crying. And the next 5 to 10 minutes, I do not remember. I think I went into shock. Mike said that I was still talking to the operator. I don't remember what we said. And then he got on the phone and talked to the operator, and I don't remember that part either. And so in about 5 to 10 minutes, the police and fire arrived at the same time. And they asked where the body was, and I showed them where Kristen was lying. And they said, well, you and your husband go sit where you'll be comfortable while we complete the investigation. Can you believe that? So we went and sat around the corner in our living room where we couldn't see Kristen, but we could see all the police and detectives and coroner and everybody else filing in and out. And then I said, can we have somebody come sit with us? And they said yes. So we called this wonderful couple that had just dropped us off. She was my very best friend. And then I called this man that was a doctor, and they came and sat with us for 4 hours. We found her at 2, I'll say the police got there about 2:15, and they left about 6:30. And everybody said, why did she kill herself? Because my good friend, I mean, she knew everything about me and my family, and I went, I don't know. I didn't know she was suicidal. I said, the only thing I can imagine is she's been really upset because her boyfriend broke up with her. But you know who's not upset about a breakup like that? And when she first started college as a freshman, she met and fell madly in love with this sophomore fraternity man. And she fell totally head over heels, and they started dating exclusively. Well, almost a year later, in September of '95, before he killed her, or she died, she killed herself. That really gets exciting. No, it wasn't that bad. That was a shock to the story, wasn't it? That he had broken up with her, and she called me from school and said he'd broken up with her. And that's the bad part about being so far away from home, is you can't just run home. I know a woman at Lehigh 2 nights ago said she had a crisis on campus, and she's from California, and she wanted to go home, and her mom said, you know, I'll pay full fare, but she couldn't even get a flight, and then you know how hard it is to leave college. So I said, Kristen, you know, just call me anytime you want to. And so she was calling me every day crying. So after 2 weeks, I said, can you call me every other day, trying to wean her. And so then she called me every other day. So then after about a month of this, what do you think I said? What would your mother have said? Get over it? Exactly. And that's what I said. And you know, it helps me to hear you guys say that, because I know I'm not the only one, and I wasn't the mean mom. And I said, Kristen, you know, just get on with your life. You know, you have grieved long enough. And so when she came home in October, she was really sad and depressed, and stayed in her room alone and wrote in her journal. But I wasn't concerned because it had only been 3 weeks. And then she came home in November for Thanksgiving, and she was not any happier. She was just the same. We would go skiing. She seemed happy while we were skiing, but then when we come back home, she'd retreat to her room. And it never dawned on me to read her journal, and because I just was thinking, oh, how wonderful that she's putting the words down on paper. But I was not a nosy mom, and I never, ever, ever went through Kristen's drawers or closet or anything. And so then when she came home for Christmas, and I thought, well, you know, if she's this bad at Christmas, I'm going to get her to a counselor, because I've had a lot of counseling, and it's really helped me. Well, she came home for Christmas, and she was so happy. She's like, I'm going out with my friends, you know, I'm open to finding a new boyfriend. And we said, well, you don't have to go back to Baker. You can change schools. You can drop out for a semester. And she goes, no, I'm fine. Now, do any of you know why she was fine when she knew she was going to kill herself? I know somebody knows. Yes? Because she had a plan. And unless you've studied much about depression or suicide, it's so hard to understand. And I was severely depressed when Kristen was 5 months old, but I was never suicidal. But I can tell from reading Kristen's journal, from hearing about suicide notes that other people have written, from talking to students that have attempted suicide, that they are in so much pain that they just want the pain to stop, and they think the only way to stop the pain is death. So when they make a plan, they actually feel relieved and happy. Does that make any sense at all? And I did not know that, and of course neither did her friends. We just didn't have that wisdom. So I asked the detective if Kristen had left a suicide note. And he said, well, there's not a note, but there's this spiral notebook by her side. It's open to the middle, and it looks like she scribbled a short note in red ink. Well, this was the journal that she evidently had been writing in all semester that I had not snooped and read. So I said, can I read it? And he said, no, I have to take it to headquarters to study. Now, don't you think that was rude? I thought as the mom, I should read my daughter's suicide note immediately, but they were by the book police. So then Mike went down to headquarters about 2 weeks later. I don't remember, I don't think there was much for him to pick up, but he got the journal. He had read it before me because I was teaching, and it really upset him. He had been crying. And he said, this is very upsetting. I don't think you should read it. And I said, I don't care how bad it is. I have got to know what was going on in Kristen's life. So this journal started her freshman year of college. And she was so happy, like I know you were to be going away to college. She got the college of her choice. You know, you feel so strong and independent. She loved that. She was ready to spread her wings and fly. She talked about meeting this fraternity man and had all this mushy stuff about him. She had lyrics to her favorite songs. She and I love music, and she really paid attention to lyrics. And then I got to the middle of the journal, and she had all this description about what it felt like to be raped. Well, I had no clue. How many women do you think tell their parents when they're raped? Not very many. Just from traveling and talking to counselors, I think it's about only 10% tell their parents, and she had chosen not to tell us. And I want to share a poem with you that she wrote about being raped that was in the journal. 1 step, 2 steps, a whisper and a breeze. Glance around. Who's there? A shadow? No, it's just me. A chill runs up and down my spine. Should I really feel this safe? But it's him, a friend for comfort. Or maybe not. A smile, a touch, relaxing. What is he thinking of? A smile, a touch, and then persistence. My comfort has flown away. The pain, the stench, the look of hate in his eyes. It's finally over. And now a shadow hangs over me. 1 step, 2 steps, a whisper and a breeze, a void of despair. I feel as if I'm plagued with a disease. Violation, pain, hate, and guilt. They enter now into this world of despair. What to do? Where to go? Who can help me now? Is he still out there? What is left of my soul? I think that's such beautiful writing, as sad as it is. And I've had so many women that have been raped tell me that poem describes exactly how they felt. And if you'd like a copy of that poem, I'll be more than happy to send it to you. Well, with all this writing about the rape, she didn't name the perpetrator. And I was so mad because I wanted to know who did this to her. So I got on the phone and I called her best friend in Littleton, Michelle. And I said, Michelle, did you know Kristen was raped? I just read it in her journal. And she said, yes, I did. And she said, I tried to get her to tell you, but this is why Kristen said she wouldn't tell us, and see how many of y'all feel the same way. She said, my mother would get hysterical and my father would kill the guy. How many of you kind of feel the same way? Exactly. And I know some of you men are probably thinking, and I would kill the guy if I knew who it was. And so she didn't tell us. So this is the scenario. Kristen was a lifeguard, like I said, and they would party in the summer. And her rape happened the first weekend of August of '95 before she killed herself. And she'd been at this lifeguard party, and it was at this man's apartment who was 21. And I'm sure they'd been drinking, and the party broke up, and he asked her to stay and watch a movie, and then he raped her. It's such a typical acquaintance rape scenario. And I said, well, which lifeguard was it? Because I knew a lot of the guys. Well, she'd forgotten his name, but I named her 3 best guy friends, and I said, is it any of these? And she said, yes, I'm sure it's so-and-so. So then I called the Alpha Chi Omega house, and even though it's a tiny college, they have sorority houses, and about 40 women sleep in the house. And I talked to one of her best friends and roommates, Amy. And I said, Amy, did you know Kristen was raped? And she said, yes, I did. I said, well, how many Alpha Chi's knew? And she said, well, first it was just those of us that roomed together, but her depression got so bad that soon the whole house knew. Well, that kind of lets me know from my traveling that that was a very close chapter, because I go to a lot of schools, and I know like at Lehigh, the Alpha Chi house sleeps 30 women, and they said they probably wouldn't know if somebody had been raped or was depressed, because they would try so very hard to hide it. And I know you don't have that living situation, and I don't know if you'd know or not. So I asked Amy what had happened, and she told me the identical story of Michelle, and she picked the same man. So then I called the detective in Littleton who had read the journal because he'd had it for 2 weeks. I said, I think I know who raped Kristen. I gave his name, that he lived in Littleton, where he worked, and where he went to college. And what do you think that detective told me? There's nothing we can do, because we have to be able to put Kristen on the stand. Well, since I couldn't do anything legally, I wrote him a letter. Now, I didn't come right out and accuse him, because I thought, what if the women had the wrong guy? And I'm a very fair person. So I said, dear so-and-so, I know you were a friend of Kristen's, and you've probably heard by now that she committed suicide. And since you were such good friends, I thought you'd want to know why. The reason was she was raped by someone she thought she could trust, and she could not live with the pain and the hurt. How many of you think I heard back from that lifeguard? No, I did not. And if we had the men closer, I'd ask you, but I get to ask gentlemen, you know, how would you feel if you were innocent and got that letter? And I know a man at Lehigh said that he would immediately get in touch with me to defend himself. Don't you think most guys would do that if they were innocent? And then one sweet young man said that he would call me or come over to offer sympathy. I've had a lot of men say that. And then I've had some men say, you know, they want to try to find out who did it to beat the shit out of him. But I didn't hear from him at all. And I remember I mentioned the boyfriend broke up with her, but we didn't know why. I found out about this through Amy, the Alpha Chi, and her journal, because she had an entry in her journal, and she said, let's see, I'm going to have to check this one out. It's short, but I haven't memorized it as well as I have the poem. She said that she had experienced life and death, and now the loss of the one she truly loved. She said, the only experience left is life and my own death. Jeff, I didn't want to put any guilt on you, but you drove me to the edge after my rape. Now, why would she write something so dramatic? How could he drive her to the edge after her rape? Can you guess what happened? Anybody want to guess? Why did he break up with her? Yes? I think he felt like she cheated on him, because she went back to school. She got all her courage to tell her boyfriend. Now think how hard that would be, because I know some of y'all are in a relationship. And he broke up with her. And I will never really know why. More people say that maybe he didn't believe it was her, you know, that it was her fault. She must have led him on. A man at Lehigh said, you know, maybe he couldn't deal with her depression, which is quite possible, because women that have been sexually assaulted and men that have been sexually assaulted sometimes go into a very deep depression. Now, my husband, to this day, 13 years later, still is mad at the boyfriend. Probably madder at him than the rapist, because he and I both think that if he could have stuck with her and supported her, she might have survived. Do you kind of think that? Because he meant the world to her. Now, I do not blame him, because I work with college students, and I know that sometimes there are things you don't understand. So I wrote him a letter. And now I email with my BlackBerry, and I would love to hear from you. And I'm on Facebook, so you can friend me. And I told him I did not blame him for Kristen's death. I said, I knew him very well. He stayed with us, as a matter of fact, the New Year's Eve before. And I said, you were only 21, you were not a trained counselor, and you just didn't know how to handle it. And being such a small Greek community, he went to some of our Alpha Chi sisters and said that I'd written that letter and how nice it was of me and how good it made him feel. He said that he would like to call me. He never did, but I understand that would be hard for him. Well, according to her Alpha Chi sisters I talked to, she was showing every single classic sign of depression, but they weren't trained to know that these were all the signs of a true depression. Although Amy was very, very worried and made an appointment for Kristen to see the counselor, but Kristen refused to go. Now, what do you do if you've got a friend you're worried about? You try to get them to go to counseling, they won't go. You make the appointment, they won't go. What else can you do? Yes? Go with them. That helps so much. And I'm still in touch with 4 of Kristins Story sisters, and one of them's Amy. And to this day, she feels so badly she didn't go with her. But she had a job interview, and I said, Amy, you know what? At that time, I would have chosen the job interview too. You can also go, if your friend refuses to go, and talk to the counselor yourself about how you can help your friend. Well, I'm going to go over the signs of depression, and I want you to think about yourself, your relatives, your mom and dad. Your parents may be at a time in their life that they may be going through midlife depression. You may feel continually sad and helpless, and things that used to make you happy that you love to do, maybe you don't love doing it anymore. You're tired all the time. Well, that's a tough one because when you're in college, aren't you always tired all the time? I'm tired all the time. You may have sleep disorders. Maybe you can't get to sleep, or maybe you have insomnia. Eating disorders are huge, and there's many, many reasons why men and women have eating disorders, but one of them can be depression. And something else that I need to add to my PowerPoint that has really increased dramatically in the last 10 years is self-mutilation. You're familiar with that, aren't you? The cutting is getting real prominent on college campuses. And it's something that's hard for me to understand because in my depression, I never would have the nerve to cut myself because I hate pain. But I've talked to cutters, and the way they explain it, they said that the pain in their heart is so difficult to deal with that they get it out on their skin and their body, and it actually helps them, which is a whole very difficult disorder to recover from. You may have difficulty concentrating, and your grades might go down. I wish I could talk to parents, because you know the first thing parents do if your grades drop is want to punish you or lecture you. But maybe there's something going on in your life that's making you depressed that they need to look at. You may feel guilty and worthless, very helpless. You may be irritable. You may be crying all the time. I do seminars at conferences on depression and suicide, and I've worked with fraternities on depression in men, because men manifest depression differently from women. And one of the things, I mean, a man is apt to be crying openly, but he may be angry or picking fights. Most people, I guess I shouldn't say most, but a lot turn to more alcohol use or drug abuse, trying to self-medicate. You may have aches and pains. You may feel hopeless, and you might be having thoughts of suicide. These are some good websites to go to. You all are real good researchers. If you want to know more about depression, just go online. Rape is a crime of the heart for the victim, but a crime of convenience for the perpetrator. For a man or a woman that is molested as a child or sexually assaulted, it's something they'll never forget. But they can recover. I personally believe you can't recover without help. I've recovered from losing Kristen. That doesn't mean I don't have days I cry. I have this hole in my heart. but I've been able to recover, number one, through my faith. I have a very, very strong faith in God, and He has really helped me through this. I have a wonderful husband. A lot of couples divorce after the loss of a child. It just made our marriage stronger. And I've had a lot of counseling. So if you have been sexually assaulted or molested, you definitely can recover. But for the perpetrator, it's just an event and means nothing. Sex plus no equals rape, and I know you've heard no means no. If a woman means no, it doesn't mean maybe. But most of the time on college campuses, a woman has been drinking when she's sexually assaulted and can't give consent and may not know what's happening. Well, can you call it rape then if she's been drinking? Yes, you can. The law in almost every state, and I know it's definitely all up here in the Northeast, says if you have intercourse with a woman under the influence of drugs or alcohol and she's unable to give consent, it's felony rape. And so many women think it's their fault, or we think it's somebody else's fault if they were drunk. But that is what makes it felony rape. 50% of women college students face sexual aggression in some form. The FBI estimates 1 in 3 women will be raped in her lifetime. For men, there's a lot of different studies out there, but I think the most common one I've seen is 1 in 10 men will be sexually assaulted in their lifetime. A woman is raped every 2 minutes, and 1 in 4 college women are victims of rape or attempted rape. That's a huge statistic, isn't it? So if you don't think you know anybody at Villanova, it's because they're not talking about it. The most dangerous time is for college freshman women before your first break, which is usually Thanksgiving, because you're on campus, you've got parties you've never had before, you have more alcohol than you've had, you really don't have anybody breathing down your neck. 46% of women that are raped never tell anyone. Now, I think that number is too low, don't you? At Villanova, what percent of women would you say would never tell anyone? Can you just yell out a number?
80.
80% wouldn't tell anyone. How many agree with that, that maybe 80% would not tell? Wow, that's high. And you know what? It doesn't surprise me, because I have found in my experience your tougher academic schools, your more prestigious schools, your private schools are less apt to tell, because you might be more ashamed of it, or you might feel more private. Do you think I'm right about that? That's kind of what I found in my travels. You know where else they don't talk about it? The South. I don't know if any of you are from the South, but we live in Texas now. But in the South, women are very private, and they're ashamed of things that happen. And Ralph, you will find this very interesting, and you guys are very fortunate to go to a wonderful Catholic university, because Rebecca, the Greek advisor at Duquesne, is a friend of mine, and they won't let me come in because I'm talking about rape. Can you guys believe that? I have had, and they're not the only one, I have had colleges turn me down because rape doesn't happen on our campus. We don't talk about it. Isn't that sad? So hopefully we can change, maybe Rebecca can get them to change their mind at Duquesne. 95% don't report it to the police, and like I said earlier, 90% of the time you are raped by someone you know. Alcohol or drugs is involved 90% of the time. That's no big surprise. 42% of women that are raped have sex with the rapist again. I almost left that out of my PowerPoint, but I have gotten so many responses from that that's happened to. Why in the world would a woman have sex again with someone that raped her? Can you think of an instance? You can just shout it out, and then you can say if you know. Why would you do that? That she what? She's scared, that's right, that he might rape her again. Exactly. Yes, sir.
Maybe lonely.
She might be lonely, exactly, because so many times they think that they just want to be with someone and that will make them feel better. Okay, why else? Right, she doesn't want it to be a one-night stand, so let's form a relationship that will make me feel better about it. Okay, what else? Yes?
She may think that he actually cares about her.
Right, maybe she doesn't even realize it's rape. In studies, so many times women have been raped by the definition, but she thinks he really cares about her, and she doesn't want to admit it's rape, so she'll have sex. Why else? We have a bunch of hands. This is super. Yes? It could have been her boyfriend. Maybe you're in a relationship. Maybe you are having sex, but then one night he forces you. Well, you're not. How hard would that be to think that your husband's or your boyfriend's a rapist? My husband could force me, and it would be rape, right? Or maybe you're in a relationship. You're a virgin, and then one night your boyfriend forces you to have sex. Well, you may not want to break up with him over that, so then you'll go ahead and have consensual sex. Something else that I've seen is a lot of, I won't say a lot, that's wrong, but some women become very promiscuous after they've been raped. And I want you to think about if you know anybody like that. And that's like she's trying to get approval back. She's trying to get she's thinking it's affection, but it's really not affection. And she's feeling in control. She is in control if she's seducing him. Does that make sense? Rather than a man seducing her. 30% of women that are raped contemplate suicide. So, and that's true of men that are sexually assaulted too. So watch your friends for being suicidal. And 92% of the time, if a woman reports a rape, she's telling the truth. And I'm going to end with how you can help. Be a good listener and don't try to fix it. I find on some universities the women are more apt to tell their guy friends because the men tend to be less judgmental, I think, and sometimes maybe they listen better because we want to fix it. I'm still kind of a fix-it person, but I've learned over the years to be quiet and be a better listener. And don't judge her. Don't say, well, you know you had too much to drink and you were hanging all over him at the bar and you were dressed like a slut. What did you expect? Nobody asked to be raped. Offer shelter. Now you have all kinds of living situations here, but maybe you have an apartment and she would feel better coming to stay with you for a while. Be attainable. Put some of the personal things you want to do on hold for your friend. Be patient and understanding. Don't be overly protective, and this is especially for the men, because men tell me if their little sister or their ex or their girlfriend comes to them and tells them they've been raped, that so many times you just want to find out who did it and, beat the guy up or just smother her with attention or just not let her make any decisions. But she has to still have a life and be able to make decisions. Encourage action. I should remember this, but if you're raped in this area, do you know the best hospital to go to? Does anybody know? I should have found that out. I wish Ralph or he might know. But be sure, I don't know how you can do research, but only certain hospitals can do a rape kit. And it takes special techniques. You have to have a specially trained nurse to take evidence. They can take evidence and hold it sometimes for a number of years while you decide if you want to press charges. Accept what she chooses to do and put aside your own personal feelings. If you're on campus, I hope you were given at orientation a hotline to call that, you know what number to call, don't you? Do you have some kind of number in your notebook or cards to call? But if you're on spring break, if you're at home, if you're somewhere else on a date or at a party and you're raped and you don't know who to call, you can dial 1-800-656-HOPE. And then you can remember that because you might be helping a girlfriend or just a female friend. 1-800-656-HOPE. And they give you the local rape crisis center. if they're talking about suicide, if they're just talking about it, then you try to get them to go to the counselor, or you can go yourself. If they have the gun or the pills or whatever, then of course you will dial 911 because that is definitely an emergency. Let me back up. This is a book I normally travel with, and I forgot to bring one on this trip. It's called Recovering from Rape by Linda LaDre, and if you forget the name, email me and I'll send it to you. I buy mine at Barnes & Noble. They seem to keep them in stock. And half of every chapter is for men, because men always want to know what they can do to help. This is my email address, so if you would like to share a story with me, if you have some comments, if you have some questions, I normally like to have a question and answer after, but I know you're in the middle of midterms and you're on a time crunch, and I respect that very much.